Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on the royal family. We provide you with the exciting news. Prince William makes a shocking demand to investigate Queen Camilla's son after hidden secret revealed. Following Prince William's abrupt and grave illness in early November 2025, Buckingham Palace is allegedly experiencing an unprecedented internal crisis. Numerous sources from the royal household report that a confidential internal investigation has commenced after his hospitalization due to allegations of deliberate food poisoning. The investigation centered on Tom Parker Bowles, the son of Queen Camilla, and has uncovered a significant conspiracy about succession and royal assets. These allegations have destabilized the institution at a period of existing strain on the monarchy. A select group of senior royals and advisors engaged in urgent private discussions on a swift transfer of authority to his successor owing to King Charles III's severe worsening illness. Amid this precarious context, where leadership strategy was particularly pressing, an apparently ordinary family supper escalated into a comprehensive security, constitutional, and domestic crisis, jeopardizing the relationships of the king-queen and the heir apparent. To preserve confidentiality, palace officials refrain from disclosing internal assessments or security protocols invoking a principle of discretion over the sovereign's health and domestic affairs. Nonetheless, several insiders have disclosed a narrative of betrayal, forensic scrutiny, and a poignant confrontation that has profoundly impacted the inner circle of the royal family. The investigation, allegedly initiated at the behest of the Prince of Wales, is now under the direct oversight of King Charles, who is contending with deteriorating health and a sense of betrayal from inside the household. A monarchy poised for transformation. In autumn 2025, the UK exercised caution. The King's public engagements had diminished, and although official statements were measured and well articulated, political and media circles were aware of his precarious health. Notwithstanding ongoing cancer treatment, senior courtiers said that the 76-year-old monarch was frail and experiencing agony owing to severe illness. Medical concerns prompted a reassessment of the monarchy's ceremonial duties, public engagements, and long-term strategies. Senior personnel of the royal household implemented contingency preparations after the secret assessments. A select, reliable assembly of senior royals and advisors concentrated on an expedited transition of responsibilities rather than just succession. An orderly and voluntary abdication was deemed necessary to uphold public responsibilities and prevent constitutional uncertainty. This would be uncommon in contemporary times and need intricate legal, ceremonial, and constitutional deliberations, including the formulation of official documents, engagement with governmental and ecclesiastical authorities, and careful sequencing to prevent a constitutional void or impropriety. The Prince of Wales personally discussed challenging matters with his wife, Catherine, the Princess of Wales. William had briefings from personnel, constitutional authorities, and ceremonial consultants, and dedicated decades to public service to equip him for the throne. Nevertheless, the king's deteriorating health expedited the circumstances, intensifying the strain. He was not only rehearsing for a role, he was prepared to do it in challenging and maybe contentious circumstances. Reports indicate that he was eager to preserve national continuity, but reluctant to curtail his father's authority while Charles was living and unwell. Private meetings occurred in the grand rooms of Buckingham Palace, which had hosted centuries of significant debates. The participants received briefing documents, legal frameworks, and procedural guidelines detailing the necessary steps for a voluntary transfer of the throne, including the individuals to be consulted, required instruments, timing of public announcements, and coordination with government ministers and the Church of England. During a meeting, the Prince of Wales said, "We must prepare for every scenario," his tone conveying both a sense of duty and the distress of a son confronting his father's frailty. William saw the idea of governing the country under such challenging circumstances as daunting. Tom Parker Bowles, The progeny of Queen Camilla and a renowned gourmet author and chef visited Buckingham Palace at this delicate period. An official objective was a culinary project associated with one of the Queen's charitable patronages. Parker Bowles, a renowned chef and culinary commentator, traversed the palace like many who had been employed there. An accidental observation in an anteroom where a folder was momentarily abandoned on a console table may have been consequential. A paper entitled Draft Proposal Abdication, Timetable and Coronation Protocol was partly revealed. A discreet inquiry revealed that Prince William will ascend to the throne in December 2025, contingent upon the King's approval. Parker Bowles was astonished by the document. The proposed deadline was alarmingly just weeks away. He was promptly apprehensive over his mother's residential status, as shown by future evidence. He understood that Queen Camilla's ceremonial role and public significance would alter if the king abdicated or ceded the kingdom to William promptly. A transfer of the crown would unequivocally displace Camilla from the ceremonial nucleus and diminish her power. Parker Bowles left the palace certain he needed to take action to ensure his mother's future, experiencing feelings of protectiveness, humiliation, and resentment. A covert assembly and deliberate hazard. Later that day, at a charity supper at Windsor Castle, Queen Camilla's son urgently said, "Mother, we must convene." Currently, she departed from the event and proceeded to his restaurant in Chelsea perturbed. They conversed softly in a secluded eating room with high walls to mitigate the noise from the service. Parker Bowles notified his mother of his notice of documents suggesting an imminent change in responsibilities and its schedule. Camilla was astonished by the news, having dedicated years as a consort, publicly engaged and discreetly loyal to the king. She was concerned that she would be relocated without prior notification. Camilla responded with pragmatism and candor. "If William ascends to the throne sooner rather than later, we will have nothing remaining." She had recognized her precariousness, understanding that the consort's role, albeit customary, did not provide legal residency or power amid swift transitions. The gathering, initiated by an alarm, transitioned into a strategic discussion. Participants later characterized the dialogue as a strategic maneuver to delay or complicate the heir's succession rather than an effort to damage the king. Some stories indicate that the objective was to incapacitate Prince William enough to postpone the power transfer without inflicting major harm. The strategy exploited medical deficiencies. Camilla purportedly said that William has a sensitive digestive system and may exhibit extreme reactions to some foods, particularly shellfish. The concept centered on the medical element. Parker Bowles, a skilled cook and resolute individual, proposed a non-lethal method to achieve their objective. He elucidated in clear scientific language how certain bacteria might transform free histidine in oily fish into histamine, potentially resulting in scombratoxin poisoning or scombroid poisoning, which manifests symptoms akin to an allergic response. In vulnerable individuals, such an event may induce abdominal discomfort, nausea, emesis, flushing, cephalalgia, rash, hypotension, or hypertension palpitations, and cardiac repercussions. He assured his mother, "It will not be fatal," indicating that the sickness would need medical attention and cause a delay, but would not be lethal. However, it will necessitate his hospitalization for weeks or months. No one will regard the abdication paperwork at that time. Parker Bowles purportedly informed investigators that he believed the subsequent technical measures would result in the desired outcome, purchasing salmon shortly after its advised sale date, employing a combination of smoked and fresh components to obscure distinctive odors, and presenting the dish after the family had vacated the dining area to enhance initial bewilderment. The speaker said that scombroid illness is often non-lethal if addressed promptly. Nonetheless, it necessitates hospitalization and vigilant monitoring, which would postpone the fulfillment of royal duties as stated by him and his mother. Secondly, they consolidated Camilla's royal property holdings. This phase focused on Clarence House, a historic royal residence that Camilla saw as a personal anchor and essential base in London. They purportedly intended to provide King Charles with a seemingly official document demonstrating that the late Queen had previously authorized a private transfer of Clarence House to Camilla, amending a less formal prior agreement. The pair said that Camilla's continued possession of the residence was warranted by this purported arrangement, established out of appreciation and loyalty. Camilla enlisted the assistance of Victor Hargreaves, a distinguished art restorer and paper conservator recognized for his technical proficiency and capacity to duplicate historical materials for exhibits and restoration endeavors. In a poorly lit workshop, Hargreaves produced a document that might withstand superficial scrutiny by using period-appropriate stock paper, mimicking historical inks, and reproducing mechanical scratches and age characteristic of genuine artifacts. He purportedly extracted samples less significant correspondence, bearing the late Queen's signature and a confidential seal, and used them to create composite prints or pasted reproductions. Camilla managed the process via discreet meetings and phone conversations, rationalizing the deception as a protective strategy to ensure her financial security and dignity in later life. The conspirators deemed themselves prepared upon finalizing the forged document and organizing the dinner, night of deceit. The state dining room of Buckingham Palace accommodated a family meal on October 20, 2025. The expansive table gleamed with silver and crystal while candles in sophisticated candelabra illuminated faces at what was promoted as a symbol of familial unity amidst political and personal strife. Queen Camilla adeptly fulfilled her role as hostess, while King Charles, weakened by illness, endeavored to maintain composure. William, the Princess of Wales, and other immediate family members convened in anticipation of a quiet period of camaraderie and support under public scrutiny. The princess conveyed her apprehension to her husband upon the receipt of the formal invitation earlier that day. "Does this dinner not seem peculiar, William?" she purportedly inquired softly. Why, at this moment when tensions are high, she had an acute awareness of social dynamics and saw that the timing and circumstances were peculiar, which William dismissed as mere anxiousness due to recent limitations. "It is merely a familial assembly, dear," he said. Camilla would not attempt anything at such a time. Tragically erroneous. The dialogue at the table was enjoyable but subdued. Previous dinners were formal. The king and queen subtly exhibited unity, while family members smiled hesitantly. Upon the serving of the main course, Parker Bowles exited the kitchens to personally offer his dish salmon pasta in a cream sauce, which he characterized in his customary affable style as my own special recipe. Subsequently, staff informed investigators that the meal had a distinctive combination of smoked and fresh ingredients. Approximately 30 minutes after the main course was cleared, the evening's regulated normalcy was disrupted. Prince William immediately grasped his abdomen during an intense abdominal spasm. He had dizziness, blurred vision, facial flushing, followed by pallor and perspiration on his forehead. In his effort to stand, he collapsed from fatigue. Immediate and tumultuous reaction in the dining room. The Princess of Wales supported her husband and summoned assistance. Royal medics and security personnel were swiftly summoned. The king, who had vacillated throughout the evening, was evidently distressed. In public, Camilla exhibited the alarmed, fearful composure of a hostess confronting a medical emergency. Insiders later described a private reaction in which she let herself have a brief feeling of gratification that the plan's first stage had seemingly worked. At the location, Prince William was stabilized and transported under stringent security to King Edward VII Hospital in Marylebone, a prestigious facility patronized by royalty and other individuals. Subsequently, official statements characterized his condition as a severe allergic reaction requiring observation and supportive treatment. Healthcare practitioners administered urgent care for anaphylactoid or scombroid-like symptoms, including intravenous fluids, antihistamines, corticosteroids, and the surveillance of cardiovascular and respiratory metrics. Physicians used caution in diagnosis and treatment due to the symptoms presented. Following blood tests and a comprehensive dietary history, specialists identified histamine-related illness as a potential diagnosis. To exclude IgE-mediated anaphylaxis, sepsis, and other acute etiologies, cardiology and allergy specialists were consulted owing to intermittent palpitations and fluctuations in blood pressure. Following the stabilization of William's health, one questioned the rationale of such a reaction occurring at that specific time and place. A feeble monarch and fabricated heritage reports indicate that the palace acted swiftly and strategically during the prince's hospitalization. Camilla allegedly visited King Charles in his study shortly after his emotional collapse. He was taken aback by his son's sudden illness and his own health vulnerability. The atmosphere was one of dread and sorrow. Camilla, seeming distressed and contrite, purportedly remembered a private promise made by the late queen to recognize her devotion and provide her accommodation at Clarence House. She provided Charles with a forged document with the deceased sovereign's seal and signature. The king examined the document, beset by inner turmoil over his son's grave condition and his own death. The recognizable handwriting and seal conferred authenticity to the private agreement. He executed property transfer paperwork, which investigators suspected he would have done upon further contemplation owing to his emotional condition stemming from familial discord and prolonged recollections. He said, "I will elucidate it to William when he recovers," as Camilla stifled a momentary sense of satisfaction in safeguarding a personal legacy. Insiders said that the signing was both an emotional and pragmatic error for the king. It demonstrated the risks associated with a susceptible sovereign receiving an ostensibly secret testamentary letter. The event prompted palace authorities to swiftly evaluate measures for safeguarding the sovereign in emergencies, a matter with legislative and constitutional ramifications because of the significant impact of the monarch's actions. Princess Inquiry and Internal Examination. While Prince William recuperated in the hospital, Princess Catherine remained by his bedside. Her uneasiness transformed into suspicion when the illness coincided with extensive discussions over an abdication timetable. Emily, a respected member of her clandestine office, sought an urgent, discreet conversation away from the ward using her instincts. Emily confirmed Catherine's gravest apprehensions in a secluded hospital corridor away from staff and visitors. On the night of William's admission, she informed the princess that King Charles had signed documents transferring Clarence House to Camilla. Catherine thought that progressing a significant property dispute during the heir's emergency care was a calculated strategy to exploit the family's attention. Possessing this information, and with William still feeble and recovering, the princess orchestrated a discreet inquiry. William formed a discreet specialized team comprising a senior legal advisor with expertise in constitutional and chancery matters, a retired senior metropolitan police detective skilled in royal protection and intricate investigations, and a forensic document analyst assigned from the Royal Archives and Historical Manuscript Institutions. Their mission, executed with utmost confidentiality and devoid of any criminal accusations, was to determine if the prince's illness was deliberate and whether the arrangement at Clarence House was genuine. The team used encrypted connections and secure locations next to the hospital to trace the meal's source and examine the disputed documentation. The document examiner used non-destructive methods, including multispectral imaging, hyperspectral scanning, digital microscopy, and microchemical analysis to identify concealed inks and modifications on the paper. These approaches may reveal concealed anomalies, such as variations in ink chemical composition, revealing application dates, features of paper fiber aging, and mechanical disturbances, signifying paste-up work or later modifications. They also analyzed archive samples to ascertain provenance and age. Evidence accumulates. The inquiry produced findings within days. The senior proprietor of a little fish business in Notting Hill approached investigators at a side entrance of Buckingham Palace. He notified them that Tom Parker Bowles purchased many pounds of fish beyond its sell-by date, disbursed a substantial amount, and orchestrated an electronic transfer to ensure confidentiality. The fisherman displayed Parker Bowles' text message, "Don't worry, just a few days off," to reminisce about the incident. No one is dying. For William and his advisors, this statement, together with the acquisition of old fish and the need for confidentiality, constituted compelling proof of purpose and premeditation, the consideration to procure questionable food. Furthermore, the forensic document examination yielded definitive results. Following examination laboratory analysis and an extensive comparison with Royal Archives specimens, the expert determined the Clarence House instrument to be a proficient, however counterfeit creation. The report revealed that various sections of the letter were inscribed with distinct inks at different intervals, that the alleged signature and seal of the deceased queen were extracted from an unrelated document and superimposed, and that microscopic anomalies in the fibers surrounding the signature suggested manipulation, including synthetic adhesives and nuanced retouching. The research stated that the archival catalog omitted the alleged prior agreement. Physical and circumstantial evidence corroborated the conclusion that the device was designed to deceive the king. Investigators traced the sources of the forgery's components, including period paper inks and money transactions from Hargreaves's studio, as well as the fish purchase and intermediate payments. CCTV footage from a proximate camera and bank records reflecting cash transactions on that day corroborated the fishmonger's assertion. The team conducted interviews with kitchen personnel, suppliers, and royal family members who could have seen or interacted with the food. Initially, many were hesitant to engage due to concerns about confidentiality breaches. Nevertheless, empathetic encouragement and the seriousness of the claims compelled some to come forward. Allergy specialists used hospital data and the onset dates of symptoms to strengthen their claim. They assessed the distinctive symptoms and analytical markers of scombroid intoxication. Histamine poisoning was a credible diagnosis based on the temporal correlation between food intake and symptom start. The prince's symptoms and the absence of a previous history of acute IgE-mediated anaphylaxis. Interviews with royal culinary staff revealed that the fish was acquired from an external supplier and that unconventional procurement methods were used. William examined the laboratory findings, the fishmonger's affidavit, and correspondence financial evidence, and the timeline included inside the file independently. The alleged misconduct of a close ally of the royal family involving his stepmother and her kid was egregious. His feelings included indignation against the perpetrators, sorrow for his father, and a fervent determination to react appropriately. Dispute and consequences. Prince William returned to Buckingham Palace post-hospitalization, frail but resolute in addressing the matter. He discovered his father in the king's study, placed the investigator's file on the desk, and spoke to Charles. "Father," he proceeded composed, "we must discuss Camilla." King Charles was appalled by the document. The fishmonger's testimony, forensic evidence, and corroborative discussions were used to dispel uncertainty. The king, already weakened by illness, and the mental strain of preceding days, was devastated when the repercussions ensued. The treachery was profound. William, accompanying him, comforted and motivated him to uncover the truth. The incident agitated and enraged both father and son. The king institutionalized domestic protocols. He summoned his principal private secretary and the head of the royal household to initiate a formal internal investigation into the conduct of Queen Camilla and Tom Parker Bowles. Camilla was sent to an administrative hold, while Parker Bowles was interrogated over the alleged attempt to inflict harm. She was allegedly stripped of all official duties and barred from royal engagements. She was instructed to vacate her private rooms with the king and go to an unoccupied office suite in the palace's east wing. There, her personnel was reduced and her conversations were surveilled. King Charles was profoundly distressed by her betrayal and refused to see or interact with her. External authorities were subtly contacted throughout these internal actions. The former detective from Williams' squad addressed the criteria for the involvement of the Metropolitan Police and Crown Prosecution Service about serving officers and legal specialists. The initial evidence was presented to prosecutors, and although criminal charges necessitate a higher threshold and meticulous evaluation of whether evidence could be disclosed publicly without jeopardizing national interests or the privacy of a compromised sovereign, investigators determined that the issue merited criminal investigation avenues in conjunction with the internal review. Legal counsel examined potential criminal accusations. They assessed attempted grievous bodily harm or wounding with intent conspiracy to cause GBH fraud, forgery, and property transfer deceit. The intricacy of prosecuting high-ranking members of the royal household presents challenging issues about the evidence threshold, public and private interests, and the constitutional sensitivities involved in prosecuting a royal associate. Camilla had abrupt and intense consequences. Her supporters saw the limits as insulting, whilst palace officials defended them as essential safeguards for the Queen and the institution. The method she and her son allegedly used to get a home and preserve their dignity has failed miserably. Their actions purportedly robbed Camilla of official responsibilities and intimacy with the king rather than fostering enduring influence. The imprisonment of a prominent public figure in a small, isolated chamber inside the palace epitomizes the human toll of the dispute. The tragedy exposed vulnerabilities in the security afforded to the royal family. The exploitation of medical vulnerabilities, domestic trust, and counterfeit legal papers has elicited apprehensions about document security, traceability, and the supervision of Crown-related private property issues. In response, institutions instituted more stringent regulations on document management, enhanced provenance verification for documents submitted to the sovereign, and amended procedures for private family gatherings and hospitality in light of the king's health concerns. An impaired institution with an ambiguous future, Buckingham Palace, was in disarray. Prince William's experience of alleged familial targeting during his father's illness accelerated his evolution from a reclusive prince to a proactive leader confronting a crisis. His extensive preparation in public life over the months and years had not equipped him for familial betrayal at such a pivotal moment. King Charles was profoundly disturbed by the prospect that a family member had attempted to manipulate his son's health and his own decision-making. It undermined the foundation of family trust and the institution's ethical integrity. The consequences for the monarchy may be enduring. Constitutional legitimacy, ceremonial continuity, internal coherence, and moral authority are vital to a governing dynasty. Accusations of intentional misconduct and personal signature, forging at the highest national echelons, jeopardize public trust in the monarchy's legitimacy. The internal investigation at Buckingham Palace sought not only to identify criminal liability or administrative violations, but also to re-establish rigorous oversight and accountability for the Crown's private and public matters. Investigators continued to analyze the scam. Forensic specialists examined the paper and inks used in the forgeries, along with the financial transactions associated with the acquisition of dubious food and payments to intermediaries. Legal advisors examined the temporary transfer of Clarence House and the potential recognition, revocation, or annulment of royal family private property rights if acquired via fraudulent means. The Crown's legal team investigated the annulment of the deed and the recovery of the inheritance, along with civil and criminal repercussions for the involved parties. William and his small team advanced cautiously to avoid a public spectacle while constructing a legally robust case capable of withstanding public and judicial examination. Betrayals, ethical quandaries, and personal sacrifice were pivotal to the scandal. Camilla's advocates privately said that she has consistently endured public scrutiny and that her actions were driven by a fear of being excluded from a life she loves. Others deemed the practices unlawful and a breach of trust. The Prince and Princess of Wales sought to ensure familial security, safeguard the constitutional integrity of the monarchy, and avert any exploitation of vulnerabilities. Nonetheless, Advancement requires legal clarity, personnel transformation, and a public acknowledgement that reconciles transparency with individual anguish. The tragedy prompted rigorous political discussions. Ministers and senior officials were provided with secret briefings about the issue and its constitutional ramifications. Although the king retained sovereignty and the legal framework for succession remained unchanged, the possibility of a hastened transition had ignited the crisis, making it a state imperative to safeguard the process and avoid private interference. Officials deliberated on safeguarding constitutional outcomes against private deceit rather than interfering with the royal family's affairs. The briefing papers for ministers addressed the mechanics of voluntary abdication within contemporary constitutional frameworks, the function of letters patent and parliament in cases necessitating parliamentary approval for a transfer, and the implications of the Regency Act in instances when disability hinders the sovereign from fulfilling obligations. Advisors evaluated the necessary involvement of the Church of England, the established church and institutional partner, in the coronation and oath-taking process in expedited arrangements. This underscored the delicate equilibrium between familial and constitutional rights. Public reaction, as assessed, ranged from surprise and admiration to indignation and mockery. Tabloids emphasized the sensationalism of fabricated dinner, a contrived heritage, and royal intrigue, while more discerning observers contemplated the gravity of an institution entangled in such personal discord. Surveys conducted by political offices indicated a temporary decrease in confidence in the monarchy's governance. Experts cautioned that the palace's transparency, accountability, and treatment of involved persons would influence public view over time. Prince William was said to have stood at a palace window at dawn over London, in the aftermath of these events contemplating the unforeseen future. The medical emergency, alleged betrayal, contrived legacy, and rapid familial breakdown could not be obscured by the city's radiance. The monarchy endured political, social, and personal upheavals, yet this crisis, originating inside the royal family, constituted a profound injury requiring time, transparency, and restoration. Investigations persisted. The king's inquiry aimed to reconcile accountability with familial affliction, and the crown's constitutional importance with legal precision and institutional awareness. Officials from the Metropolitan Police responsible for safeguarding the sovereign and investigating significant occurrences allegedly worked in conjunction with the palace's legal team and the Crown Prosecution Service to assess the probability of criminal charges. Disclosure regulations, witness protection for palace staff, and the management of secret or sensitive materials were meticulously evaluated. Events would dictate the monarchy's forced transition and the fates of those closely involved. The household is contemplating changes, including enhanced legal instrument training, procurement audit trails, improved document management, and the establishment of a small independent review panel to provide guidance on matters concerning private family interactions and public responsibilities. Initial suggestions advocated for a more intimate collaboration between the royal legal team and external counsel for property and criminal matters. The gravity of the issue was evident to all participants. An institution rooted in tradition and trust had been destabilized from inside, and the Crown's recuperation from this catastrophe would facilitate the restoration of confidence with the nation it symbolizes. Legal clarity and institutional reform are essential. Nevertheless, public engagement is also necessary about the monarchy's management of private familial affairs and public duties under heightened scrutiny. In the following weeks, authorities and advisors endeavored to sustain governmental functions, prioritize the king's health, and enforce procedural safeguards. In private, experienced politicians and other top officials counseled the emperor and his heir on measured and methodical justice and restoration. The disaster exposed vulnerabilities within the family that would need time to rectify. Restoring trust after an intimate dissolution may need time and sustained effort. The outcome of the formal legal processes and the internal probe was ambiguous. Legalizing prosecutions would provide significant challenges with the public trial of those closely associated with the sovereign. Internal remedies may annul the disputed property transfer and secure resignations or other penalties, but the palace must still publicly exhibit its integrity without disclosing private suffering. In any case, popular sentiments would change. Currently, the palace and the country it symbolizes confront a singular instance of familial betrayal, forensic revelation, and constitutional peril. The event demonstrated that even the most esteemed organizations may be vulnerable when private interests and allegiances intertwine with official power. This crisis and its resultant reforms will be closely examined both domestically and globally as a measure of how a constitutional monarchy can integrate tradition with modern accountability amidst unexpected and significant internal conflict. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share it.